Welcome back to Dirtbag America, where we resist the American corporate hegemony by building shit for free. There's nothing quite like cracking a crispy beverage and smoking up some fish with a couple of your favorite people. If you've been thinking about building a smoker yourself, well, come along because this build is going to teach you guys the basics that you need to know to pull it off. Oh. Like every build on this channel, I try to spend as little money as possible, but today we're gonna up the ante with a money counter in the corner so that by the end, you guys will know exactly how much this thing cost. So without further ado, let's get into the build. Actually, come over here, let me tell you something. Not only do I like getting my fish hot, but I also like getting my feet hot. So let's talk about today's sponsor. Recently, a buddy of mine bought this old beat-up house and he's been living in it while he fixes it up. It only needs a few small tweaks to the floor, foundation, ceiling, insulation, and walls, and after that, it'll be good to go. Today, I'm gonna be helping him rip up this laminate that's probably been here since before my balls dropped and replacing it with some fresh, brown, beautiful tile. Nice. It's a win-win because I get to learn how to do something right for once and he gets to harvest my blood, sweat, and tears via manual labor. But to make it even better, today's video sponsor QuietWarmth sent us some of their products to take this project from sad to Chad. QuietWarmth makes these super handy underfloor heaters that are easy to install even for a dirtbag like me. Just peel and stick. What could we mess up? Once you figure out where you want them to go, you just stick them down and then seal up the sides using the adhesive that comes pre-installed. Wow, look at that. Nice. The last thing we had to do was a little bit of electrical work, which my buddy did because I don't know what I'm doing, and frankly, I'm too beautiful to die young. Then we were good to go to start prepping the rest of our floor and throwing down some tiles. One thing I like about these QuietWarmth panels is they come in a bunch of different shapes and sizes, so as long as you don't suck at measuring, like some of us, not gonna name any names, you should have no problem getting the right fit.
Hello, Jake.
We're using these really pretty brown hexagonal tiles. Wow, geometry. But QuietWarmth sells a bunch of different kits and sends super detailed instructions for almost any different type of flooring you might want to put down. Also, check out this feat of engineering magic. If the panel's a little bit too long, you can just trim the end off and it still works. If you're interested in taking a peek at QuietWarmth's products, head down to the link in the description and make sure you use the promo code to save yourself a little bit of money. Okay, let's get into this thing. So there's really only two main components to this build. A firebox where we're gonna generate our heat and our smoke, and some kind of a rack that's food safe and heat safe where we can put the stuff that we're trying to cook. Should be no problem, but we're gonna find out together. Step one is to build our firebox, and for that, we need our first procured material. These garden blocks came from a friend of mine, and all they cost me was a couple aching vertebrae and a little bit of time. What we've got here is pretty much just a fire pit with tall walls and a couple of holes for air intake. Let's introduce our second material of the build. What the fuck? This old baking tray fits perfectly over the firebox, which, believe it or not, is exactly how I planned it. Oh yeah, and I got it for free. For step two, we need to build some kind of enclosure to hold our rack, and to do that, we're gonna be tearing apart this humble pallet. I chose this pallet specifically because it is both untreated and made of super clean looking cedar wood. I'm hoping the cedar will add a little flavor to the smoking process, and because it's going to be an outdoor smoker, the cedar wood won't rot, which is great. We're really just building a basic box here, and to do that, I'm gonna make two frames using the pallet wood that I've ripped down into smaller, more manageable sections. These are gonna be the top and the bottom of our box, and ideally that baking tray from earlier should fit perfectly in here. Wow, looks like somebody was feeling measury today. Hell yeah, our frame's looking great, and it cost us another $0.0. Hey! Oh, my bad, little chihuahua. Add $1 for the pin nails we used on the frame. For the walls and roof of our box, we're going to be using these old tongue-and-groove fence boards that I saved from a buddy's dump run. Admittedly, I don't know a ton about these, but they're probably not treated, and I think they're either cedar or pine. We're just going to cross the old fingers and hope that they don't impart any potentially volatile toxins to my bloodstream through the smoking process. In other words, they were free, and it'll probably be fine. Okay, what we're doing here is super simple. I'm just throwing a couple pin nails in each board to hold it in place, and you can see I'm using this board at the bottom as a spacer. You'll understand why later, but for now, don't worry about it. Only one more thing to do on this guy, and we can move on, but first, you always gotta give it a couple smacks, you know, just to check your work. Now, it's generally good practice to use nails that are the correct depth for the material that you're working with. I, however, did not want to go to the store, and this is all I had, so I got to trim these guys down to make them a little more friendly. Now, you remember how I said that spacer would make sense? Well, take a look at this. It left us with about a ½ inch gap around the top of our frame, so now when we put our roof boards down, they're perfectly flush. Little tricks like these are the kind of thing you pick up when you're regularly trying to avoid the old measuring purgatory. But anyway, it's looking pretty good now, so we can take it over to the firebox and see if everything fits together. Wow, sometimes it's like I actually know what I'm doing. Nah, probably got lucky. Okay, for step 3, we're gonna seal both the firebox and the upper enclosure to make sure we can control the amount of air that's entering the system. To do that, we're gonna make a quick cob out of some muddy clay and some dry grass that I harvested from around my place. If you don't know what cob is, I could probably make a video about it in the future, but for now, just know it's kind of like poor man's concrete. The main goal here is to reduce air leakage in and out of the firebox so that we can control our fire better and also direct our smoke. It also gives me a great way to seal the wooden box to the concrete blocks. Oh, I almost forgot. How much does mud cost? The answer is not a lot. We're getting real close to being able to test this thing out, but first we gotta cover a couple more details. I threw together this quick door the same way we made everything else, and it fit like a glove. I do have some hinges and latches kicking around, but I don't really want to burn them on this project, so we're just gonna make a quick latch out of a piece of scrap wood and a screw. For the fourth and final step, it's time to rack this bad boy up, and we actually had to spend a little bit of money this time. I've got a lot of chicken wire mesh lying around, but I didn't want to use it because it's all galvanized steel. Galvanized metal emits a toxic fume when heated, and as much as I joke, I'm not trying to get cancer anytime soon. But I lucked out and I found this stainless steel wire mesh that was for sale at a local building store. Shout out to Swain's, if you know, you know. The best part was they sold it by the foot, so I was able to buy exactly what I needed, and it came out to about $8. I left the mesh a little long so that I could fold down the sharp bits that were protruding from the enclosure. If you've ever worked with wire mesh, you know it can be quite stabby. With the rack ready to go, it was time to put in our final touch and the last material of this build. When you're smoking, you really want to keep track of temps, so I got this little meat thermometer for like $10 from the grocery store. And that's it, y'all. Now the last thing we have to do is give it a test. I've literally never smoked anything before, so we're gonna be using charcoal to light this thing up because I've read that's a good fuel for beginners. Plus, I like to use my torch anytime I can because it makes me feel like a frickin' fire wizard. You can see I'm using the baking tray as a heat block to make sure the stuff I'm smoking doesn't cook too quickly, and now all we gotta do is wait for this thing to heat up. It didn't take too long before we were sitting in the money zone and it was time to grab my fish and get this thing loaded up. I had the deep and profound pleasure of catching a ton of fish this year, and I brined it the night prior with a mixture of brown sugar and salt. I would say the most challenging part of using this build was maintaining the temp. I can't say I was incredibly patient, and I did open the door quite a few times, which let out a lot of heat and made the process take longer than it probably should have. Let's be honest, if I could just relax and not check on it every 5 minutes, it probably would have gone really smooth. However, I did add this great feature on the back where I can remove these stone blocks and then add a little bit of extra fuel without having to take the entire door off. I know, I'm a genius. But anyway, after a few hours, it did end up working, and I got some amazing fish, as you can see here, with a beautiful skin on it, and it tasted fantastic. All in all, this build came to a grand total of $19, but we'll round up to 20 just in case I forgot something. I'd say that's pretty good, but if you guys have any ideas of how I could have made this thing better or suggestions on how I can improve my smoking techniques, leave a comment in the box, and I'll see you guys in the next one.